Drive closer! I want to hit them with my sword!
By the Emperor's sainted underpants, if I can't nut the Xenos filth with the spikes on my cap, then we're too far away! Navigator Mortis, I demand that you throttle the engines before I throttle your hide so hard that not even Zone Holy Zient would find your bloated carcass in its defiled realm when I send it over there with my boot! Servants of the Imperium! Wait a minute, you're not servants of the Imperium, you're my viewers! Where's my data slate? How long has it been? It's been years since I last saw you. It's the year 42,016. It's been a while since I last did a video. I guess that's what warp travel does. I was only expected to go forward 12 weeks, and here we are now. I guess it's been a while. I suppose I owe you some content. If there's even any subscribers still left in 40,000 years. How about I tell you about the legacy of Dorn, the Herald of Oblivion?
Adventure games aren't really my thing, nor are story-heavy RPGs a lot of the time. In fact, anything that requires me to stop listening to podcasts and consult tech priests, or rather just rack my brain, is too much for me. It's the reason why I was never recruited into the Adeptus Astartes. Because I'm dumb. And I wouldn't have it any other way. Despite of having the intellect of an orc boy that's one chopper short of, having a load of choppers, I thoroughly enjoyed this Warhammer 40,000 game that has 2 subtitles, because Warhammer marketing teams seem to get off at being a pain in the arse with YouTube video title boxes, as End Times Vermintide and Dawn of War 2 Retribution have shown us. Legacy of Dorn, Herald of Oblivion has you play as Brother Nabor of the Imperial Fists, the most important chapter of the Adeptus Astartes, second only to the Ultramarines, as they'd fought valiantly in the defense of Terra during the Horus Heresy. It's not as though being a new Space Marine chapter is all that interesting though. The Imperial Fists aren't recognised as the siege masters they're supposed to be. Instead, the developers opted in to make them generic Terminator armoured space cadets, but hey, what's new there? I've yet to see a Warhammer game that goes out of its way to make the Astartes different in more ways than its motto. Your mission has you board a Space Hulk that's been missing for centuries, which has only just been delivered from the thunderous bowels of the warp, and is infested with a great number of unspeakable monstrosities. In your mission, you'll encounter the vast devouring fleet of predators known as the Tyranids, you'll come across the mysterious, technologically advanced pirates known as the Dark Eldar, you'll encounter remnants of the once dominant species of the galaxy, the Necrons.
But worst of all, you'll come across the most dreadful force in the galaxy, an enemy that makes the Emperor quake in his comatose enhanced boots. Space Hawks!
But seeing factions that aren't normally in Warhammer games except in DLC like the Necrons or Dark Eldar aren't the only things that make this good. Legacy of Dawn removes a lot of the guesswork you'd expect from adventure games, but it also provides some simple but satisfying CRPG combat sequences along the way. As it's a choose-your-own adventure deal, the navigation of this vessel is as straightforward as clicking one of a couple of options when you're prompted to, revealing more of the story as you progress. If the choice you made doesn't kill you, that is. And there's as much unnecessary fluff in this game as a squig's bottom, which is to say none at all, because they don't actually have arses. I mean, fair enough, nothing in your path goes without a lengthy description, but at least it helps set the scene so well that I start to prefer this approach as to whatever the fanciest graphics engine and talented artists could. If you're into Warhammer books and wikis, you'll be able to appreciate the quote-unquote art style that's gone into Herald of Oblivion. The amount of text is overwhelming, but not once did it put me off. All it did was make me realise how little I'd accomplished in so much time, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. The game's well paced even if it doesn't feel it at first, so if you are going to play the game, make sure you don't play it when you need to set off for work, or if you need a poo. Speaking of caca, it doesn't help that the text font and colour are as pleasant to look at as a Chaos Space Marine's fecal matter either, slowing down your reading speed more just so you can separate the U's from the O's, the G's from the Y's, and the X's from those little symbols of corn that I've been scribbling on my walls in blood. My point is that it's a bit hard to read at first, but you'll soon get used to it. And you can expect to get used to dying a fair bit as well. I wouldn't recommend you take progress for granted, as it only takes one wrong move to end your life, and you're more likely to lose it to a text choice rather than in combat, but that's not to say that the fighting is crap. Battle works like this. Imagine Space Hulk where you're fighting in claustrophobic lanes, your resources are incredibly limited, and you're alone. Now put it in first person, remove any idea of where you are, and completely remove the set pieces. Although it's not as tough or even strategic as Space Hulk, it's just as terrifying. Turn-based affair, you'll be using action points to attack, focus, which increases your chance to hit and reduce your enemy's chances of hitting you, and move backwards and forwards. Advancing and withdrawing is an important aspect of the fight, especially to ranged players who think a clever tactic is to keep withdrawing, but all you'll accomplish is backing yourself into a wall. Ranged attacks are powerful and keep your foes at bay, but they use ammunition and you won't get any more unless you actively search for it throughout the campaign. You also need to use it during text options, but as someone who mostly uses melee attacks, I don't necessarily mind. And really that's it. The game's battle sequences are simplistic and more often than not repetitive, considering the best tactic is almost always to focus, attack and then focus in your turn. By doing that, you're increasing your chance to hit and then reducing your chance to be hit, but this means you're only getting one attack per turn, and if you're facing more than 3 enemies at once, you're just going to get bored incredibly quickly.
It's that time of the review where we inspect the pictures of the game and listen to the vox chatter, even though there's virtually no visuals or soundtrack in this game.
Legacy of Dorn has no graphics to speak of. What few images there are reserved for combat with holographic sprites with no animations, or comic book-like artwork that you'll sometimes come across in key scenes of the game, and yet it's one of the most inspiring games of the franchise. If you know the jargon, understand what a Space Hulk is, and love the fluff of the codices and the novels, you'll be able to paint an organic mental picture of where you are in the game. The writing brings everything to life, going into detail to create a chilling image as you read the text and fight the Herald of Oblivion's Xenos inhabitants. The soundtrack is so generically grimdark that I turned off the music almost instantly, occasionally going back to it just so I could comment on it in this part of the review. It goes for atmospheric with heavy drum beats and solemn chimes, but fails miserably at making the Space Hulk any more threatening.
Before we evacuate this ancient rig, it's time to finish what we started by giving you my final thoughts.
Legacy of Dorn, Herald of Oblivion is both a good Warhammer 40,000 game and a good video game. That's not something you'd hear from me every day, as much as it might feel like it. As the first entry to a trilogy, the game makes Space Hulks feel more than just generic spaceships created in the grim darkness of the far future, but the Imperial fists don't feel any different to other Space Marine chapters. Yet. The enemies you face are varied with different stats and weapons, and I give credit to the game for trying to make it seem like this matters, but enemies are limited to the simple combat design and don't show their badassness with animations. The threat of the Necrons or Dark Eldar is reduced when they have the same move and attack animations as a Gretchen. As for the game's length, the full playthrough from start to finish can be approximately an hour and a half to 2 hours long, mostly depending on your reading speed and what choices you make. However, I guarantee you won't see everything in your first go, and the thrill of knowing there's more to do always does wonders to make it more replayable. A quick note on the endings though, and don't worry I shan't spoil anything, they're crap. They're utter rubbish. Herald of Oblivion gets off to making you feel guilty and reminds you that you could have done something better. If you're a completionist, don't expect to leave the game satisfied. My advice is to enjoy the journey rather than destination. In conclusion, I'm more than happy to recommend this game for £6.99, and it's one of the few mobile ports I've seen that's been handled well. I mean, I know it takes effort to screw up a port of a digital book, but still, get it if you want all those years of reading codices, rulebooks, novels and supplement books to go to good use.
Until the next time, I'm Commissar Johnbonne, your #1 source for #2 games. Now, if you'll excuse me, it's about time I rammed this vessel. Praise be the Omnisire!